Welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta, and we're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, please click the like button on this video. Also, feel free to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're a Vikings fan, also hit that like button because Minnesota Vikings keep finding ways to win after they take down the Saints in London in what turned out to be a crazy finish, kind of a crazy game, although for most of it, it was kind of a boring game. Kind of a field goal fest for the Vikings. Greg Joseph ends up hitting 5 field goals, which, I mean, Greg Joseph's the man. He's been top notch basically all season long. And then, you get a drive when you need it out of Kirk Cousins once again, which was good to see. He's been fairly clutch so far this season, which is kind of surprising to see. But for the most part, once again in this game, kind of similar to the Lions game last week. Just not much out of the offense for a good portion of this game. I mean, I think we started off, we had an opening drive touchdown, scored 7-0 right off the bat, and then we just did basically nothing with it. I can't remember exactly what the score was going into the half, but what was it? It was like 13-6 or something.
13-7, yeah, because we had two different chances at the end when we were – we were tied at 7, and we had 2 different chances to score touchdowns there in like the last minute or two of the second or the first half, and we just didn't do anything with it. Yeah,
because they had the fumble deep in their own territory that gave us the ball right back, and so that was disappointing. Obviously, the offense just missed a ton of chances to convert, but we're gonna try and spin this a little positively because the Vikings are 3-1. They're through a somewhat difficult stretch of their schedule, at least based on what we thought maybe preseason wise. We knew the Eagles were going to be tough. We knew the Packers were going to be tough. And I think we kind of assumed the Saints are going to be a middle-of-the-road NFC team, albeit they're not looking so good right now, but they're dealing with a bunch of injuries. Still a tough defense you have to go against. 3-1, we got 2 more games before the bye. You got the Bears at home. Then you're in Miami against a Dolphins team that might not have Tua after his crazy concussion stuff that's been going on. So what do you make of where we're sitting right now, Liberta?
Yeah, this league, this game, it's all about end results, and at the end of the day, we're 3-1. I think that's what we should all be happy about. That's what we're looking for out of this team now for a number of years. Ever since that magical 2017 season with Case, we've basically been largely under 500. 2019 was a pretty solid campaign, but even then, I felt like we left something to be desired. So I think this is a great start for us, especially in year 1 under a rookie head coach. So I'm pretty excited with where we're at. Obviously, there's a lot of things to nitpick, a lot of things to improve here, but I don't think even the best teams really play that well early in the season either. It's like, how many times have we seen the Packers where it seems like they're grinding out games? Like, for instance, they did against the Patriots. Like, they should not have struggled that much, but at the end of the day, they won. And when you come back, like later in the season, look back on it, it's like nobody's going to remember that. Nobody's going to care because they won at the end of the day. So that's what those good teams do. That's why the Packers have won 13 games in each season, each of the last 3 years. Every year they've had LaFleur, and feels like they're trending in that direction where this year is no different, of course. But it boils down to one of those things where it's like you just find ways to win because you hope it's just going to get better later in the season. Your team will feel a bit more put together, but it's basically just not putting yourself in a hole right away at the beginning of the season like we have the last couple. So this is very encouraging, and I like where we're at. I think this team is showing some resolve, like you said, Kirk. I think it's showing some clutchness that we haven't really seen. I mean, that throw on that drive that set up the game-winning field goal, that just dropped in a bucket to Jefferson. That was incredible. So hats off to him. I think he's had some timely moments this year, which feels pretty. It's not the norm for Kirk, so I'm pretty happy about that. So 3-1, can't complain. I know a lot of things that you get frustrated about watching the game, but it's not always gonna be perfect. So it's good to pick up a win against a team that you might come down to the end of the season. That tiebreaker might prove really huge against the Saints.
Yeah, and I think as diehard fans like we are, and I know there's a lot of diehard fans out there for the Vikings, you want everything to look pretty. You want the run game to be working. You want Jefferson to get his targets. You want Thielen to get his targets. You want the defense to hold opponents to 10, 14 points. I think we just all got to come to the realization that it's going to be very rare that all that stuff happens, especially at the same time. So, I mean, the defense once again didn't look fantastic for stretches of this game. I mean, Andy Dalton was able to move the ball. Him and Latavius Murray. I mean, what year is it? 2022, and we got Andy Dalton and Latavius Murray gashing our defense. But So, I mean, there's going to be things like that. Daniil Hunter's still not getting to the quarterback, which I still think is somewhat concerning. But at the same time, I think he's got an adjustment in terms of adjusting to a 3-4 because I think he was probably better off, as a down lineman with his hand in the dirt. But now he's kind of a mix of being down and standing up and rushing, as a stand up linebacker. So um, hopefully he's able to figure it out here soon because he's by no means like out of his prime. He's not, he's obviously in great shape. So it's none of that stuff that's really concerning about him. It might just be more so his fit in the scheme. But yeah, otherwise, like defensively, I thought Cam Dancer played a great game, which was good to see after a rough game last week against the Lions. Patrick Peterson played pretty well. I didn't really notice any corners getting shredded by. Caleb Evans had a rough play, I guess, on a deep ball, but other than that, like pretty solid all around effort from the defense, other than really just not being able to stop the run on a couple of those drives and not getting to the quarterback. But you know, we've all kind of said coming into the season, the defense isn't going to be fantastic. You're not going to see a top 5 unit like you saw in 2017 with the Zimmer, in the old Zimmer days. So um, I don't know. I think offensively, this team's definitely got a long way to go still, and I think that they're going to improve. I mean, all the playmakers are there. You got a smart head coach who cares about his relationship with the quarterback, and he knows he's got to get his playmakers the ball. I think Kevin O'Connell will find a way. Now, it might take a few more weeks yet. We do have our bye in a couple of weeks, as I mentioned earlier. Maybe during the bye week, he's able to really sit down and figure some stuff out. So maybe the next couple games against the Bears and Dolphins still look kind of ugly. But if you can scratch and claw and get wins out of those games, you're sitting at 4-2, potentially 5-1. And then you coming out of the bye, who you got? You got Cardinals, you got Washington Commanders. Neither of those teams look very good. You do have the Bills on the road, which is obviously a tough challenge. But I mean, the rest of the schedule just doesn't look super daunting in terms of opponents and matchups, other than maybe the Bills game, the Packers on the road, and then I mean, you can maybe just say the Cowboys at home because the Cowboys are 3-1 with Cooper Rush at quarterback.
Yeah.
Patriots, I think, will be a difficult game just because we saw how difficult they were for the Packers. That Patriots defense is pretty good still. So
yeah.
Definitely a couple interesting matchups left on the schedule, but overall, I think we're sitting in a very good spot. It is early, but they're winning games and they still haven't even come close to figuring it all out yet.
Yeah, can't count our chickens for the hatch just because we saw this, 2016 when we started 5-0. I believe that was the only time in the Zimmer era that we actually started with at least a 3-1 record after 4 games. I think that was the only year because I think all the other years we made the playoffs. I think we started 2-2. Yep. So like that year was awesome. Then we're going to the bye week 5-0. Like we're just higher than high, and then after that it was just a disaster. Go 3-8 the rest of the year and end up at 8-8. So like I can't get too excited, but I think there's a reason for optimism here. Like you said, they're finding ways to win. I think as far as like nitpicking things, like you said, I think the defense, you feel like at the end of the game, especially, it would be nice to generate a stop or two in that second half. Because the first half, I think they allowed less than 100 yards of offense for the Saints. So like it was good. They had Saints at the one drive. That was about it. Otherwise, they played pretty well. Second half, not so much. But again, that's like you said, we got to set expectations. And coming into the year, you probably would have accepted having an average defense. And truthfully, I think that's what we got. So it kind of comes down to the offense really being what we also envision, that that's more of like a top 10, borderline top 5 units. And I think that's going to come together. I love the creativity that O'Connell's got with all these plays, all these schemes, all these designs. I think it's fantastic. Hopefully Kirk's going to get a little more comfortable in the system. And then really our guys just staying healthy, especially in the skill positions. I think Thielen had a great game against the Saints. I think that Jefferson obviously bounced back, 10 catches, 147 yards. Osborne is there when you need him. That's always awesome. Our tight ends, I think, leave a little something to be desired. But again, that's probably another thing where you got to set a baseline where we weren't expecting much out of them coming in this year. I think the one thing that is probably the most worrisome for me is just being able – I know this is going to sound – a little bit, we're throwing it back to the previous regime and basically something that was just beat in the dirt, and it's establishing the run. But like, truthfully, I don't like what I'm seeing out of our run game so far this year. We haven't been able to run the ball effectively at all. And I think that's what can help you win games against good teams is when you can run effectively, just milk the clock, have these long sustaining drives where you end up with like these ones where you just like carving the defense up or just like just a bunch of 1,000 paper cuts. It's
Right.
like one of those things where control clock, and then you keep your defense out the field against the good teams who have the good offenses. I think that's what we need to. That's what we need to see better of. And on the flip side, that's what the defense do. I think that's our glaring weakness right now is being able to stop the run. I feel like the yards per carry allowed is not where it should be right now, even for an average defense. So I'd like to see that improve. So yeah, both ways, both running the ball and stopping the run, I think need to get better if we're gonna start winning against premier competition, or we envision ourselves winning against those best teams come the playoffs if we get there.
Yeah, because I mean, you can't put it all on Kirk Cousins to go and win a matchup
So,
against a team like the Bills, where you probably do need to dominate like time of possession or something to even have a chance. It
yeah,
is kind of interesting. Like, I don't know if it's really a Dalvin Cook problem or if the running lanes aren't there or what's going on, but like, I mean, I guess Madison hasn't looked amazing when he's been in either. But I mean, Cook still hasn't rushed for 100 yards. Granted, his carries are down. I think he's only getting like 18 to 20 carries a game now compared to like 25 to 30. But
which is a lot better,
um,
I think. But
yeah, which, hopefully, it keeps him a little healthier, a little more fresh. But at the same time, I agree with you. We haven't seen any like big runs yet. Um, and like you said, that just opens things up in the passing game.
makes your play action way better.
Exactly. And Kirk feeds off the play action very well. So, yeah, I don't know. It is kind of interesting struggle. But I mean, maybe part of it's the scheme, the kind of run plays they're running. I've kind of noticed they don't run to the outside too often. They really have Delvin
Sure,
running in between the tackles.
sure.
So, I don't know if that's really his strong suit or not, but and it could just be some of the offensive linemen too. Like obviously Darisaw's, he's just a beast on both ends, running and passing. Same with O'Neal, but maybe Ed Ingram's struggling a little bit in the run game. I know he hasn't been amazing in the pass game, but and Bradbury too. I mean, it's hard to know. I know, historically he's a good run blocker, but maybe those guys are just struggling to create some lanes up front. So it is concerning. I agree. I mean, hopefully they're able to, get that figured out as well. But quickly before we take off here, it appears Lewis Cine has suffered a season-ending injury. Obviously, just you hate to see that for a rookie like that. I mean, what do you make of it, Liberta? The Vikings, obviously, everyone's going to compare him to Kyle Hamilton because they could have stayed at 12 and picked him. Um, the Ravens end up getting him at 14. We trade with the Lions. They trade up to get Jamal Williams, who's yet to make his debut. And then, we trade back, but we also collect picks that end up being Andrew Booth, Ed Ingram. So, I mean, obviously it's hard to judge draft class, not even a full season through, but I mean, how are you kind of feeling about that, the way that first couple rounds played out for the Vikings?
Yeah, I think we got to be patient. I don't think it's the time to make any hard judgments on this way or that way we could have gone in the draft. I think that this is way too early, and it's really unfortunate what happened to Scene. Obviously, just that was a gruesome injury for those who saw that replay and saw what happened. Like, oh, that's just terrible. I really feel for him, especially now he's got to stay in London to have surgery, and one of the
Right.
team officials or some of them are staying behind. Like, that's just a terrible situation, bad circumstances. So I really hope for a speedy recovery because that looked pretty bad. But I still have pretty high hopes for him. I think modern medicine's come a long ways as far as being able to get guys back to 100% just as good as they were before, even when you face injuries like this that feel as catastrophic as they are. So
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot left to be determined. And I know Kyle Hamilton's look good. I think he's improved. It feels like every week the Ravens play, but still, I still think there's some naysayers out there that don't feel quite as strong about Hamilton. So I'm kind of like, I don't really know what he is yet either.
Yeah.
And then also to point out with our second round picks too, I think that's huge. So we got a plug and play day one starting right guard out of Ed Ingram. So I think
Yeah.
that shouldn't go unnoticed. And then Booth, I think Booth concerns me a little bit more because he had an injury history at Clemson, and now it's kind of carried over in the NFL. And he's played one game so far. He got hurt in that Packers game on special teams, and now here we are, and he hasn't played again.
Right.
So I don't love that. So I certainly does this whole trading down that we did doesn't look good right now. But at the same time, I think that there's a lot left to be ironed out, and a lot left to be determined, a lot left to learn here in these next couple of years.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's too early to cast judgment on it. Lewis Cine could still be a very good football player for this team. I guess part of my thing now, though, is like, I'm going to give Kwesi the benefit of the doubt. It was his first NFL draft, but like, just stop getting so cute in these drafts. Like Rick Spielman did the same thing. Like I know you want to try to accumulate picks and get the best value possible, but sometimes you just got to stay at your pick and pick a damn good football player. Like, I mean, it's not rocket science. Like, okay, maybe you and I were on a wide receiver train. We probably didn't need a wide receiver. Wide receiver room's looking pretty good, but I mean, Kyle Hamilton would have been nice. There could have been who knows? We could have drafted Jordan Davis at 12. He's wrecking people for the Eagles. So like, um, you know, maybe they'll live and learn from it. Maybe next year will be completely different in the draft. But yeah, and like you said, Andrew Booth could turn out. He could still turn out to be a good football player. But yeah, his injury problems are definitely concerning. Because man, I want to see some depth here at the corner position because I feel like an injury to P2 and we're in some trouble. So
Yeah.
Any other final thoughts from you before we take off here?
Yeah, embrace the ugly. Just as long as we're winning, I think everything's fine under a first year head coach. I think it's different than like you should feel different than after like an ugly win last year, where it feels like a coaching staff was just hanging on to keep their jobs. Where now it feels like we're building and going somewhere where theoretically this should look a lot better at the end of the season. You should get those prettier wins. You just got to be patient and wait for this offense to come around because I think it's going to be explosive. It's just taking some time to come together, and we'll see where we're at after we come out of the bye. I think that's the biggest thing to take away here.
For sure, I agree. It's a completely different feel because yeah, I mean, how many years of Mike Zimmer are we going to sit there and say the offense still looks like crap? I mean, when is he finally going to figure this out? He's constantly cycling through offensive coordinators, so yeah, there's going to be some stability here, but like you said, it's just going to take some time. And this offense has way too many good players to not be explosive. So I agree. Embrace the ugliness. Embrace stacking wins early in the season when you can. Because if you lose a couple of these games, if you lose to the Lions, if you lose to the Saints, that really puts you behind the 8 ball in the playoff race. So keep staying ahead of it. And so that will do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, please click the like button on this video and feel free to subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram, and let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of the Vikings Saints game in London? Just thoughts on the offense, slow start in general. Any defensive thoughts, and maybe your thoughts on just the Vikings draft strategy after Lewis Cine being out for the year now and Andrew Booth still not really making any sort of impact on this team. So let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, thanks for watching.